Hey traders, Raghi here, and in this free video we're going to take things back to basics because I think in this current environment making sure you're building a watch list of the best candidates is so important, and really an adherence to being a trader, looking at only crude or only bonds or only gold or dollar or S&P and NASDAQ. In this environment where the market's waiting with bated breath on new news about the US-China trade negotiations, or waiting for the Federal Reserve members, the voting members specifically, to mention something about what this market is anticipating. And if you take a look at Fed Fund futures for December are pricing in 2 rate cuts by the end of this year. And where is that in terms of being reflected in the broader equity markets? We really don't see it, which is interesting and also very telling of the fact that while a futures contract that does measure essentially what is a Fed behavior is not really making its way to kind of a mainstream discounting of the broader averages. So having said all that, giving you guys a background, I think it makes a lot of sense to look at, well, what else is moving? What else has clarity, whether it be an uptrend or a downtrend? And so I'm bringing you to a website because I like to share websites with you all that I use in the chat room and that I find really helpful. And this one just happens to be finviz.com. I have no affiliation with this site, just a site that I use that I think is super helpful, and I think it'll help you too. So when you get to finviz.com, click on futures, then click on performance, and you can take a look at a performance sort of chart, if you will, a one-day relative performance, 1 week, 1 month, month to date, yearly relative performance. I mean, once you start getting past the month, the quarter, and even into the year, now you're talking about focusing mostly on, say, daily time frame trends, maybe even weekly trends. So if we go to a monthly, let's say we're looking for trends that could show up on a daily time frame. So we're on a time frame long enough to not be subjected to the sort of roller coaster that we've seen on shorter term time frames, and we want to have a slightly longer term commitment and a slightly more established longer term organization on say a daily time frame. So take a look at the 1 month relative performance. Now here's how I start the scan. It's a really simple one. Take a look at about the top. In this case, it's not a number. It's not like I want you to take the top 8 or top 10. Just look for the lightest green. Don't go to the dark green, certainly don't go to the neutral, but look for the lightest green and just jot down VIX, corn, wheat, ethanol, oats, coffee, rice. Now a few of these will rule out. VIX isn't for everybody, but it is a fun one to trade. Ethanol, I'd say no. Wheat can be pretty illiquid. Okay, rough rice, ditto. Orange juice can be tricky. Canola can be pretty illiquid, but you do have a number of charts here that have some reasonable open interest volume, and I think are pretty safe for most traders. VIX is okay. Again, just be aware that you're dealing with something that can move suddenly. But corn, coffee, soybean meal, even oats, a little illiquid, but okay. Oats and wheat are pretty illiquid, by meaning not enough open interest, not enough volume, but they're okay. Soybeans and soybean meal are terrific. 30-year bond, cocoa, orange juice can be a little illiquid, but it's tradable, and the 10-year note. So these are markets that I would look at for strength. These are markets that I would look at for the type of organization that would qualify as green grab candle uptrends. A lot of you know that we've been very bullish for about now coming up on 6 or 7 months on the 30-year bond. Okay, so that's definitely something I would consider. So what would something like, for example, corn and soybean meal look like? Here's corn. All right, pretty decent uptrend, not the best one I've ever seen, but there's corn. And then let's take a look at, well, let's look at something that's not a grain. How about cocoa? I think cocoa was on that list too. Let's take a look at cocoa. Not too bad. Not something I'd say isn't a great trend, but it does merit keeping an eye on. Green grab candles trading above the wave. Well, we do the same thing for downtrends as well. And again, what I'm taking you through is just a really basic process to look outside maybe some charts that you've been pretty fixated on. Again, you might rule out crude. You might rule out gas. You might rule out S&P and Dow. You might say, you know what, I want to stay away from some of these equity sensitive names. What about feeder cattle? What about heating oil? What about live cattle? Copper. Copper is a market that we have on our radar right now. I'm very interested in shorts in copper. What else is giving us some company up here? Cotton. Well, let's go take a look at copper and cotton. So here's copper, HG, really nice downtrend, something I talked about in the premium video last night. Good downtrend, good propulsion dots, steady red grab candles. And how about cotton? Another pretty decent looking candidate. So that's how simple it can be to start to navigate around some of the markets that might be a little sensitive to what's going on with the geopolitical stress and the global economic concern, not as directly affected. Cotton, of all of these markets, of course, gang, are going to be somewhat affected. Copper takes advantage of the concern. Cotton can kind of, operate just outside of that conversation. So take a look at some of the less traveled parts of your watch list. Maybe you haven't put cotton on your watch list or cocoa on your watch list. Take a look, wait for the clarity, and this is something I try to do at least once a week. Hope this helps. Think outside the box. I'll see you in the next update.